Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Arwin, Refracted Curvature, Chocolate Saiyan, Neil, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yo, yo. Good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon, welcome one and all. We may have a little guest appearance. I think he joined us yesterday actually, but hopefully we can get Sleeping Warrior to join us. And if so, we'll be covering a video by Veritasium in regards to gravity not being a force, and various convolutions in terms of geodesics was also used in that video as far as Adam was concerned. He's just watched this yesterday, even though as far as I was concerned it had come out about 6 months ago. Perhaps I'm wrong about that. But yeah, Adam's just watched it and he wants us to cover it with Anthony Riley present if we can get hold of him. So we'll see how we get on with that. In the meantime, what do you want to do? Do you want to cover a bit of housekeeping? Or we can just have a chit-chat, so we're just chit-chatting and it's nice and casual before Anthony gets here, if he gets here at all. What would you prefer to do? Ask the panel. This is unrehearsed.
Review Brian's video.
We did that in the pre-show. I'm not doing that again. No, we're not covering Brian's video again. As much as he encouraged people to watch the video more than once. No.
Well, he's not on the panel.
Thermosphere.
Right? If he's on the panel, we should do.
Okay, no, that's fine. Now, Arwin's show today did an adequate job, if not an excellent job. In fact, let's not downplay. I just corrected myself already. Did an excellent job of covering this subject, right? So, as much as Arwin's now keen to rehash what he did this morning, like 10th is we're keen to rehash what we've covered with Brian's video this morning. No. Now, as I responded in your chat, Arwin, I was like, thermo what now? Yeah, that was my rebuttal and the end of the discussion as far as this show is concerned. However, there's lots of speculation in terms of how that came to be, what it was required for, the necessity of convoluted doublespeak thereafter that was discussed on Arwin's show. None of it, some of it speculation, some of it in terms of Arwin's understanding of the names of people that are associated. Someone in his chat was calling him on it, which I thought was quite funny. I was listening in the background when Arwin's like, look, when you're going through something in this sort of detail, which isn't much, let's be honest, Arwin, you sometimes get the names of the people involved wrong. And you're like, yeah, that's just bad. But there we go. Arwin's justification was, it don't matter who's putting this argument forth. I'm debunking the argument, at which point I was right behind him. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't really matter because you're attacking the points, not the people who've come up with the story. But yeah, check out the Flat Earth Early Bird this morning if you want to hear Arwin's very good discussion with himself and the chat about the thermosphere, because it was fascinating. And I listened to the entire show, Arwin, and it was good. But I don't want to go through it again. No offense to you, and no offense to Brian.
That's fine. I don't need to go through the entire thing, but I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention again. And yeah, I do sometimes mix up people in my chat, especially when there's like multiple people like arguing against me, and then I mix them up because they're like, I'm basically having a debate with two people at the same time.
I was listening, it was in the background while I was doing it. I assumed that you'd got the names of the people involved with the invention of the thermosphere wrong, and they were calling you on your poor citations for the people. It was just the people in the chat. Who cares? Does it matter if you get them wrong?
What?
No offense.
No, I didn't even mention anybody. I don't know who came up with the thermosphere.
Now that's a discussion we might be able to branch into. Okay, so this notion of a thermosphere, right? Again, one of the comments I said was just stolen and repurposed from QE's comments, which is to say, heat doesn't take the shape of a sphere, right? But yeah, I mean, where has this notion come from? Does anybody actually know?
Well, that's the trick, isn't it? Where did it came from? When did it start coming up? Right? In language, in writing, where did it start? I think it's not that long ago. I think it's like somewhere 20th century, perhaps. Because yeah, I mean, what is this thermosphere? Well, why does it need to be there? Well, I speculated that it probably started out because people that were heliocentric enthusiasts, they would have to explain like falling stars. Like, why are you seeing those? Like, oh, maybe they're like burning up, right? Burning up, and that's why there's no rocks ever hitting us when we see that, because it's all burning up there. And maybe that is like an origin why they needed like a super hot layer to prevent rocks, which they claim have to be there and are happening, why they never hit us. So it's like a disposal bin or a memory hole mechanism to just burn up their fictional nonsense that's supposed to be coming at us from up there. That's what I think.
Magic
you speculate,
speed.
but does anybody know?
Well, the Greeks love their spheres, and the intellectual group, which they call the ancients, which is just them basically and a few others, they say, oh, for 2,000 years, we know the Earth is a sphere. No, a small group of people, the intellectual types, wanted it to be a sphere. That's why you could only find them saying it. And then the rest of the culture show a flat disk with a dome on it. No matter what culture you go, that's the depiction. So all of a sudden, it starts catching a little bit of wind with Copernicus and on. And now here we are. The whole world believes what the Greeks believed. And they want to say, oh, for 2,000 years, everyone believes this. So, of course, everything's got to be ending with a sphere, even if it didn't start back then.
Okay, that's fascinating.
People made up a lot about the Greeks.
Yeah,
I mean,
Aristotle.
Owen, not even a real character, probably.
Stop. Look, I don't want to branch into endless speculation about whether or not the Greeks came up with the thermosphere, as fascinating as it is, and the connection that Tenth has drawn, I'm sure, is loose, but not specific, right? Do we know who, where, what, why, when it comes to specifically the thermosphere? If the answer is no, that's fine, but I don't want endless hyperbole.
I'll try to Google it.
Maybe that would be an advisable thing to do.
Yeah, my point wasn't that the Greeks came up with it. I think current, it's more current.
I agree, but if we can find out who, we can then figure out why. Because what I gleaned from our intro this morning is there's a lot of conflict in terms of the narrative of the thermosphere that just doesn't jive with a lot of current heliocentric rhetoric. So then you go, well, why have we even got it then? Well, if we can find out the who, then we can find out why we've got this origin story in the first place to have it conflicting with other parts of the heliocentric system and story. Okay, is that Sleeping Warrior? Hold on, just 1 sec. Is that Sleeping Warrior that's just joined?
Probably, but I'll keep it short. I'm just looking through the Wikipedia references, and there's literally not a single reference before 1977. That's kind of telling.
Okay. That's not great research. Okay, let's not do this on the fly. Because we have got something lined up now that Sleeping Warrior's here. If I can get him to say a quick hello and do a sound check.
Yeah. I mean, I am here. I know it's to do with gravity, but I'm not sure what we're doing.
Well, Adam's also here if he's not tied up with a hunter.
No, I'm good. I'm free. So I thought I'd mention it because I watched this last night and I just thought it was crackerjack. To just give you some really good detail and explanation from an Einsteinian perspective as to what they're actually claiming. Because sometimes it can get a bit confusing and it gets into geodesics and actually the nuance of what they're saying. And particularly how and why you can then see why they try to foist this upon the Flat Earth Society. It's quite... So I found it quite educational, as well as a giggle as to the reality of the claim. So I've posted it in Master B, Nathan, for you to pick up.
Yeah, I'm just queuing it up now, actually.
Yeah, you got it.
Well, yeah, I'm going to share the link as well with the audience. So So this video is going to be, let's just pause it so we're not missing any of the juicy details. This video is by Veritasium, as I mentioned earlier, and the link's going by in the live stream chat now. So if you want to go and check this video out, I like Veritasium. So while I say this anyway, which is don't go and hassle the guy, give him grief about flat earth or anything like that, just as always, but in the most sincerity this time, say, you know, go to his video and say, love your stuff. And by the way, the guys over at Flat Earth Debate, Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, reacted to your video, as we're about to do. And with somebody whose pet subject, let's just call it, I'm sure our, Anthony would agree with me in terms of my disdain for Coriolis effect, that Anthony actually feels the same way about gravity, but therefore it's become like a pet subject of his, where he's, you know, tends to be the one we reference when we get into this in the kind of detail that we're about to. Okay, what do you want me to do, Anthony? Do you want me to just play sections and then you can respond to them and we'll have a little chit chat about what's going on? Yeah, I think that'd be ace. Okay, well, I'll do that and we'll hopefully get some responses from you.
According to the general theory of relativity, gravity is not a force.
Oh, did you all get that? just for the low cast of our audience, which would be the numpties who think they're on a sphere. Do you need to hear that again? It's still on the subtitles, but we'll just hear that one more time so we're all clear.
According to the general theory of relativity, gravity is not a force.
We all clear? Everyone clear? Do we need it a third time? Gravity is not a force.
There are no gravitational fields.
We all clear? No gravitational fields. Wow, this is devastating. Why is he doing this in a space height? He's not a flat earther. He knows who he's poking though, doesn't he? I see why I like this guy.
Gravity is kind of an illusion.
An illusion? What, the old gas pressure? Wow. I like you, guy. I like you a lot.
And in this video, I will prove it to you by blasting off into outer space.
Now, that's a bit of a problem. You see, the second law of thermodynamics would dictate that gas would fill the area of volume claimed to be the sky vacuum known as outer space. So we'd all be dead if you were entering this area. I appreciate it's a bit of farce and it's a bit of a laugh and you're debunking gravity and all. Still, space is fake. If the sky was a vacuum, the gas we breathe would fill it in line with entropic law.
In 3, 2, 1...
And you're back in the room. Right, so we've got a rocket in CGI blasting off into space. Right, Anthony, 45 seconds in. Anything to say?
I just don't like the absence of a definition. Like, you wouldn't talk about, for example, theft or burglary without defining it, because we've all got a colloquial understanding of it. And if we talk about gravity in a colloquial sense, you instantly, it's ingrained in your brain that it's a force. So we need a definition before we go any further, and he hasn't done that yet. So I'm not worried about the spacey bit. You're right, but I want a definition.
Maybe that's why he's done it that way, because he feels that everybody has this colloquial definition of gravity in their heads as it's a force. So what better way to negate that but then to start the video with gravity is not a force according to general relativity.
You got to remember, this guy's a YouTuber, so from a shock and awe perspective, if you're making videos that are going to go viral and get millions of people to watch them, you've got to engage them at this sort of level. And as a standpoint to take as an opener within the first minute of the video, making that sort of bold declaration, truthful though it may be, is a stark opener for a good YouTube video. So yes, he's not yet got into what it actually is the uneven distribution of mass causing space and time to bend. It may get into that later into the video, but he's got to have a good opening, right?
He will. I would just look at that opening statement of truth. He's not going to shy away from it. He's going to describe how it is not a force and why it's not a force. It's a very honest bit of information he's providing. I don't think he's trying to. It's nothing to do with flat Earth. This is just his best researched explanation of what gravity is in terms of relativity, according to Einstein. Yes.
Albert Einstein said the happiest thought of his life was imagining a man falling off the roof of a house. What made Einstein so happy about this wasn't schadenfreude. It was the realization that this man, while he was falling, wouldn't feel his own weight. He would...
When do you feel your own weight, precisely? Am I missing something? Guy falls off roof, doesn't feel his own weight. So that would be to say that if you're a skydiver jumping out of a plane, you're unaware that you're hurtling towards the ground. I find that notion utterly absurd. I don't know about anybody else.
It's fundamental to relativity.
It's also a false dichotomy as well, because it's either you're traveling without moving or you're not moving at all. Oh, sorry, it's either you're not moving, but the world around you is moving, or you're moving and the world around you is not. That's a false dichotomy because there's a third option. None of it's moving. No one ever talks about that possibility. None of it's moving. You're just stationary on a stationary plane. They always change the reference point, don't they? It's either you moving or the world around you. But they never say, well, it could be nothing's moving ever.
Just remember that. Remember, all these are apologetics ultimately to reach that point. Because reality is nothing's moving. You stood atop a fixed plane. And he will make that. I think it mistakenly makes that statement, isn't it? Well, remember, that's what we're trying to model with relativity. The simple fact that we're not, really.
But we've also got to readdress the scales in terms of what G is described as when you use it colloquially. So when you're at rest, when you're sat on your chair or standing up doing nothing, yeah, you're experiencing what they describe as 1G, 1 gravity, yeah, 1 Earth gravity. Well, that 1G is a force that's present when you're not doing anything. Now, by contrast, and in the example given by an Einstein thought experiment as described by Veritasium here, we've got 0G, that's him, quote, not knowing he's got any weight when he's falling. Likewise, when you're in an orbital motion, you're described, if you're replicating that on the 0G vomit comet, well, what are you doing? You're in a perpetual motion of falling without knowing what's going on in the reference frame around you because it's fixed with no windows. But that's essentially them describing a simulation of 0G. So no weight when falling is an application of 0. It's like, no, well, we're hurtling towards the ground and potentially death. But that's 0. But when I'm completely static, it's 1G. So it's a way of moving the scale. That make sense?
He does that. He'll explain that, I think, as well.
Okay.
Would be weightless. And anything he dropped on his way down, well, it would remain stationary relative to him. Or
relative to him, yeah. But in reality, hurtling towards the ground. Anyway, if you're saying that I'm just going to be parroting off stuff he's doing after, try not to treat him as a non-friendly.
Moving in uniform motion. The whole situation would be just like
if you were in deep space, not near any large masses, with your spaceship at rest or coasting along at constant velocity.
See? At rest / coasting along at constant velocities is two things that are at odds with one another. See, if you're at 0, which they've described as moving towards the ground when the guy falls off the roof, then that's in motion. Well, he's saying when you're in space, fixed, stationary, but in constant motion, those two things are at complete odds with one another. And it's because of this readdressing of the scales.
Here, you would feel no weight. Objects would remain stationary relative to you, or if you give them a push, they would move in a straight line at constant velocity. And you would be the very definition of an inertial observer. You're not accelerating, not in a gravitational field. All the laws of physics apply in your reference frame, meaning there is no experiment you could do to distinguish your inertial reference frame from any other.
Sorry, there's no experiment you could do to distinguish your inertial reference frame from any other reference frame. An experiment would be the establishment of a cause and effect relationship based on a phenomena. And if he's saying there's no experiment you can do to explain the non-phenomena of reference frame descriptions, so Veritasium doesn't understand what science is, does he? Want to go defend him?
If you claim that there's no experiment you can do, that means that what he calls this science is actually unverifiable because you can't do anything to repeat it. And that's supposed to be one of the core tenets of science, the ability to test and retest to prove the point that you're trying to prove.
Prove the point. Whoa. Not prove the point. Establish cause for a phenomenon you've observed. So we start by saying, well, if you're saying there's no acceleration, no gravitational field, but the laws of physics, that would be laws of nature, I assume he means, still apply. Okay, well, if you're in a sky vacuum without gas filling it, then the laws of nature have already been chucked out the window. So no, that statement doesn't hold true. But what he's saying is nothing's happening. Okay, what phenomena would we put through the scientific method if nothing's happening? The answer is there isn't anything. It's not applicable.
I don't think he's meaning. I think he is misspeaking there. I think when he says experiment, I think what he's trying to say is he's got no way of defining at this point himself in which reference frame he's in. He might say, I can't do an experiment to do it, but I think he's just saying, I can't do it. So you have to, because what he's trying to do is get you into a mindset of being in space with no gravitational field. So things are just moving in. As he says, if you push it, it goes in a line. He's trying to get you into that mindset so you can become an observer of things on the earth and view them like that. That's what he's trying to story time you into being able to perceive, I think, the events he's going to bring back on Earth through that when he was, lack of reference frames.
You know, when he was talking about the guy falling off a roof, and he said that whilst he's falling, he's in a state of like... I can't remember exactly how he worded it, but he basically said that you're not really accelerating when you fall into the earth or something along them lines. Change the bloke on the roof to a helium balloon going up. You can apply the same principle, but he's deliberately choosing that one because he knows that it makes you think gravity's pulling you down. But if you describe it with a balloon or a bloke sat immersed in a swimming pool in the middle, he's neither at the surface or the floor, he's in the middle, like the egg. Or you have any other object, like a hot air balloon. If you've ever been in a hot air balloon, the basket that you sit in, you feel like you're weightless, even though you're clearly surrounded by a load of stuff, but you feel like you're weightless while you're in there. It's a really weird feeling. But if you was to use any of those analogies, you don't get that perception of something pulling you down. And it's like a dirty little secret. They never want to talk about the helium balloon. They never want to talk about submarines rising caused by getting rid of the exhaust in the water and replacing it with gas instead. Why is that? Because you're altering the relative density of the submarine, causing it to accelerate. That's the cause. That's how they work. They don't want to talk about that, but they do want to talk about falling off a roof. There you go.
That's always been the biggest okie doke of gravity, right? What's the question? Why do things fall down? Well,
and then Nathan quickly goes, they don't. They don't. They fall up. Helium balloons go up.
Exactly.
Now here comes the big leap. Einstein looks at these two scenarios and says they are equivalent, not just similar. Physically, they are exactly the same thing.
Okay, so a guy out in a pseudo bent space-time dimension that doesn't exist, where you claim the laws of nature, that's the laws of physics, according to you, apply, when in reality, the guy falling through the medium of air, because he's more dense than the air, unlike the balloon he let go when he fell off, which went upwards, because it was less dense than the medium of air, as just detailed by my panel. Well, the guy in space-time, fourth dimensional, without any air around him, without gas filling the space from the Earth that he left, is directly equivalent according to Einstein. That's what the guy's just said.
He's trying to build a reference frame, isn't he? That when he's falling off so in space, he's there, look, and the object's floating next to him, and whatever he's doing in space, he can't tell. And just inside the capsule is what it is. But when the bloke's falling off the building, the thing that creates the reference frame for everything else to be perceived as maybe going up is his window washing squidgy. So because that's falling at the same rate as him, as long as he's just looking at that and that's his frame of reference from the top, he can then perceive that the building's accelerating up from him. So the guys in the window, when he passes them, they're accelerating upwards away from him. That, I think, is what he's describing mathematically.
Okay, you happy with that, Anthony? I think at this point, according to Adam, based on what he's told me so far, he's just setting the stage anyway. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, he's I say it's very honest description for me. What he's giving right now, as counterintuitive as it is, this is actually what they claim.
It's a bit like an ad hominem attack in the sense that an ad hominem is where you insult your person, in this case the listener, in lieu of like making the point properly or addressing the point properly. Well, rather than defining gravity, he's talking about gravity and describing all these things to make you think woo-woo, right? That's the insult. He's insulting your intellect because he's not telling you the definition. It is a defined term. They just don't want to use it because if they use the defined term that Einstein defined it as, you can't get away from it not being a force. So he's insulting you by talking about woo-woo instead of addressing the actual point. What's gravity? Oh, well, it's the concept of bending space-time caused by mass or the uneven distribution of mass. But they'll never do that. So it's a really subtle insult.
They're saying he does
that. Show you bending and all sorts, mate.
Yeah.
He's really honest in the woo-woo.
Well, no, I don't even think he's really honest. He's describing it in all the bendy stuff, but he's not defining it. And if he just defines it and says it's the curvature of space-time,
we'll get there.
That's
just one sec. Quick shout out to Godzilla37, who says, if it was all about relative density, then Duper would be shrunken into the very ground itself. Don't worry, Nathan. Chocolate gets it. I'm glad he does, because I have no idea what you're talking about.
He's talking about somebody in the chat.
It's a chat skank he's talking to with his power of super chatting. Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for the financial support. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Is he giving physical explanations for mathematical descriptions?
Yes, that's what he's doing.
But he's setting the stage to give their rhetoric as they present it thus far. Adam, correct? Please, God, be correct.
Yeah, totally. Just don't over criticize. Just recognize the points, and it'll come. Honestly, he's literally. Like I said, it's really good at summarizing.
John calls it greasing the skids, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But which means man falling from roof is not in a gravitational field. There are no gravitational fields. And he is not accelerating. He is an inertial observer, just like Rocket Man.
Other than he is accelerating, but they've moved the scale. So 0 is now falling. Yeah? Okay, well, according to you, he's not accelerating. So it's like a little trick, a little con. Look at the guy falling. He's not accelerating. He's just fallen off a bloody building. But according to them, that's 0. Yeah? Not experiencing the 1G that was keeping him from floating away. It's like, no, he's more dense than the air.
It's complete nonsense. Even the objects that are supposedly falling with him, guess what's going to happen to those? Yeah, they're not going to fall at the same speed because they have a different density. They have different friction against the air. So it's all just nonsense.
He's also misrepresenting Einstein because there are gravitational fields in Einstein's theory. The Earth creates in its environment a gravitational field which acts on objects, causing them to appear to accelerate. That's what he says. That's literally his paragraph in his book.
He'll get to that. All he's trying to do now is show what the basics of falling and an analogy to that to justify why the basics of falling can be described in such a nonsensical way. And the analogy is putting it into space. And he says it's in space with no gravitational fields affecting it. There's nothing else in the way.
Whoa. I mean, okay, I can see how both of these observers feel weightless, but man falling from roof is clearly in a gravitational field. I mean, he's right next to the Earth.
See, we spoke too soon, Anthony. We're just going to let a lot of this play out now, okay?
And he's obviously accelerating. His speed is increasing by 9.8 meters per second every...
It sound familiar to what was going on with Brian earlier? I would summarise the part that Brian's about to get to, or what he's just discussed in summary, and then Brian would verbatim parrot what I just said. Well, we've just had exactly the same thing. We've had somebody's at my door. Can you guys talk amongst yourself for a minute?
Yeah.
I think that we should point out that if and they always do this, so we can always apply it. If they don't define the term gravity, we should describe that failure to do so as an ad hominem attack, because they are, instead of addressing the point that's being made, which is gravity, and like you need to define what gravity is, they are insulting your intelligence by bullshitting you with Narnia nonsense. We should describe it as an ad hominem attack. because they're insulting your intelligence. That's an attack. I know it's a bit loose, but it'll just make them address it.
What do you think do you disagree with the way he's describing it so far? Because he's about to do the critique that we've been given now, isn't it?
I disagree with the way he's describing it, yeah, because that's not really what Einstein says about the Earth creating a gravitational field. He says that it does.
He's going to get to that, I promise you. Like I say, these bits I think, contain a decent bit of genuine, the points we've got addressing. He's like now, he's just said, look, of course he's under a gravitational field. He's falling off a building.
Yeah, but he started off by saying that he wasn't under a gravitational field because he don't exist.
He's arguing with himself. Maybe you can't see on the live stream.
Second, a fact that will become painfully apparent when he crashes into the ground. I know that these two situations look very different, but Einstein's equivalence principle tells us the one thing to focus on, the experience of the observer. If they feel...
If you ignore the reality around you, the observer is experiencing the building going upwards, so therefore it's the same. That's how he's justifying it in terms of him arguing with himself about how wrong it sounds on the face of it. Okay.
The minute somebody brings up the equivalence principle in your head, you need to immediately think false dichotomy, because it isn't the only way of interpreting what's actually happening. There is a third one, and they never talk about it. So equivalence principle equals false dichotomy, because it is.
To me, this chocolate, if you're there, this is the key bit, because we've just got a load of waffle to get us to the point to accept that these two situations are the same and therefore can be described in maths as the same. This is the point of no return.
Okey doke.
Yeah. And as we witness, he admits, but that's not the same look. We know that. He recognizes that and then continues to make you accept it. But it is the same, and it's going to be described in maths as the same.
Okay.
Well, what he's doing is blowing up the okey doke for anybody that defends this nonsense, right? He's basically putting it out there for everyone. Like, this is an okey doke, and this is how they're going to get you. Well, thank you very much, Veritas.
Feel weightless, then they are in an inertial frame of reference, every bit as good as Rocket Man's out drifting through deep space. Imagine if Rocket Man, coasting along at constant velocity and not paying attention, comes upon a planet.
Hopefully he's going to get to the point where he actually starts pulling this apart, Adam, because I'm itching like Anthony probably is.
A long way off in the distance.
Oh, ad break.
He's not going to destroy it in terms of it, but he's going to explain it. So what they're actually claiming it now in terms of geodesics.
An external observer might notice that the path of the rocket bends ever so slightly towards the planet. But inside, Rocket Man would remain oblivious. He feels no force, experiences no acceleration.
Why? When you're going through a curved path, he's describing a straight path as curved because it's bent through a geodesic, right? Therefore, you don't experience anything. Well, that's because it's not bent. But it is in fourth-dimensional space-time. It's a geodesic that you're travelling through. So it appears straight but isn't straight. You're travelling through a bend in space-time. So therefore, oblivious. Well, it might as well not be happening. And how is it happening? What, in fourth-dimensional space-time? As a result of the uneven distribution of the mass, you're moving through a geodesic. It's utter tripe.
It's still begging the question as well, isn't it? Because, like, even if it was true, you're still begging the question that, like, he's following a curved trajectory, right? Even though he says he can't feel it, doesn't mean he can't feel it and it doesn't exist. It just means that if it was there, he can't feel it, and if it wasn't there, he can't feel it. So what? It's still begging the question.
He's also telling you that you're moving through a curve. And there's no reason why, but he's saying that if you were in this hypothetical scenario in an area that violates the second law of thermodynamics but is assumed to be following the laws of nature, you're not appearing to move, but as you approach a planet, you can see the planet, but what you're actually doing is travelling in a straight line whilst you're actually curving, but oblivious to it being curved. Why? Well, because it's a curve in the space-time. So you're going to be unaware of it. It's like, what? Why? Because the curve takes place through a fourth dimension that we don't experience. Yeah, exactly. That's what he's actually saying. Well, he's just, admittedly, like Adam keeps saying, he's just describing the Einsteinian rhetoric. But that doesn't stop us pulling apart for the nonsense that it is as it comes from him. No offence to you, Veritasium.
As the rocket gets closer to the planet, it goes faster and faster. But Rocket Man still feels weightless. For him, nothing has changed. So where on this journey would you say the frame of reference changes from inertial to non-inertial?
A description of a reference frame. I remember having this out with Zanuck ages ago, and I was describing Miley Cyrus jumping onto a pendulum, right? And saying that she's changing her frame of reference. And I was being criticised by Zanuck because you can't change your frame of reference in that regard. It's a description of a system that you can reference within, but you're not actually physically changing your reference frame. Yeah? Your reference frame is just your frame of reference, and it's always going to be that. But if you describe two different settings, i.e. stepping from one non-inertial turning reference frame onto something that isn't spinning, i.e. describing you moving into the inertial reference frame, that's your description of a vantage point that you can't take part in simultaneously or change from one to the other in. So he's convoluting this change in reference frames and asking us speculatively when we would notice the difference. It's so convoluted.
An onboard accelerometer would never even register a blip.
So nothing's happening because we're moving through a geodesic. You're saying that not even the accelerometer's going to pick up on you moving it through a curved trajectory, which would absolutely create a different force and be observable in what we call, shockingly, G. Well, we'd notice that if you go through a curve in a car, in a, I don't know, posh car with a G meter in it, whatever, a modern car that's got a G meter like they used to have on the old Nissans that had all the heads-up displays that told you how much G you're generating. Right? Well, that is something you feel as you go through the curve of a road. He's saying you won't feel it. So he's telling you to ignore your experience in favour of a made-up curved path that isn't actually occurring or experienceable or measurable. Or in existence, it's a fourth-dimensional effect. But there we go, that's what he's describing.
Has continued on his inertial path through space-time. So the logical conclusion is his frame of reference is inertial up until the instant he crashes into the planet.
Ugh. Right, quick shout out to... Go on.
See, that's counting. This is what I want to Tony. That's saying then that he stayed on that same geodesic until impact and there's been no effect. But he's just said previously, but because of the way it bends, he ends up accelerating even though he wouldn't feel the acceleration. And that's help, Tony. That's what I don't
He says, he literally describes how you can't measure it, you can't feel it. That's like saying Santa Claus is real because you can't see him, you can't touch him, you can't smell him, but you know that you get presents, so he must exist. Well, he knows that we must be on a ball, so that curved trajectory must exist. It is Santa for him. There is no other way to describe it.
It's telling you to deny your own experience in favour of a belief in a bent geodesic in a fourth dimension. And he's telling you how that will be physically experienceable if you're in a non-physical place that doesn't really exist. That's space, outer space, first, second law of thermodynamics violation. But what I find the most objectionable is him describing how you would physically experiencing something that isn't physically experienceable and detailing it in physical terms. And I'm going to just do a quick shout out to Godzilla 37. He says, "Damn, I got to go to work, and of course it happens just as the globies are about to be proved for the first time ever. Well, there's always a next decade." I think he's talking about them actually hearing gravity not being a force. Thank you very much indeed.
God.
Yeah, shout out to Godzilla. Thank you for the super chat. Go on, Neil. What were you saying?
I'm just letting know. I'm letting God know I'm watching you.
Okay, so how do you explain the curved path of his rocket without gravitational forces or gravitational fields?
The answer is curved spacetime.
Yeah, we're already way ahead of him, which is why this is so frustrating. He's going to lay out what we've just objected to, like it's a defense or an argument.
First, focus on Rocket Man's observation that the whole time he felt...
Right, there's no Rocket Man. No one's going out into the second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum. Yeah, as much as Adam wants us to understand that this guy's needing apologetics for, no one's experiencing this. And the people who say that they are liars. You know, I find it highly objectionable to even speculate being in this place that doesn't exist, that we're lied to about by astronauts. Yeah, I just don't like it.
Felt like he was moving with constant velocity in a...
Did he? No, this is you in a set, pretending to be a spaceman, because you can't actually physically demonstrate this, right? That's why you're doing it in this way. So why not take me to space to show it? All right, you can't. So it's just taken on faith when you dress up as a spaceman. It's an absolute insult.
In a straight line.
Straight line? But you just told us it was curved.
He was moving in a straight line through
space. A double speak contradiction. He was moving in a straight line. You just told us it was curved. Yeah, in a dimension that doesn't exist, in a place that isn't real, that you've got a fake being to make this example.
Exactly. So this is the bit I want.
But space-time around massive objects like planets is curved. So that's...
Sorry, Adam, say that again.
This is the bit that's worth responding to, their explanation of the bullshit. Because like I said, they just lay out the obvious to us that we're going to react to. It's this bit, see, that to me is the double speak that just compounds the switcheroo. And like I say, for me, importantly, it's this story you've got to believe. It's this story that's given that the mathematics uses, yeah, to then go on to describe it in maths, this story. That's why I know it's frustrating to you, but hopefully, Neil, is this helping you understand the actual waffle that we often...
Okay, do you want to do that then? If this is the most objectionable bit. Preemptively.
There's loads of objectionable explanations.
That's why his path appeared curved to a distant observer.
Oh, so irritating. It appeared curved, but it was actually straight.
Now, this isn't as unusual as it seems.
It's a complete contradiction. Unusual. It's total doublespeak.
Airplanes, for example, always try to fly the shortest route between cities.
Oh, really? So when you're talking about the Great Circle routes, can you actually show them to be circular? Because the lines that you've got drawn when you talk about latitude and longitude have been taken off a flat plane and mapped onto a grid system. So when you then reconjure them into a spherical surface and say that the planes are travelling in a straight line, well, yeah, you describe that as a great circle, but no one's actually showing it to be circular. So this is all riddled. Your example of a curved geodesic is because they've bastardized maps and curved them into tubes and then rolled them back out flat again. Therefore, what, you get circles when you're actually going straight, therefore bent geodesics. That's a false equivalence. That's a fallacy.
Well, this is a big fallacy. This one is confusing. Well, the crux of it. So he's going to use this. Maybe just play the explanation first. But this is the switcheroo for putting time as another dimension in this analogy to me.
They just go in a straight line. But since the Earth's surface is curved, the shortest path doesn't look like a straight line.
What you've just done there, Veritasium, is you've just demonstrated how map projections work, not how the globe works, or how a bent geodesic works. You're talking about fourth dimensional concepts in space-time bending, and then showing projections from a navigation system that derived the latitude lines from elevation angle measurements off a flat plane, and then turn them into a sphere surface to then unroll them as you just showed in your graphic. So going from, in the wrong order, globe, well, we've already taken a step. We've already gone from elevation angle measurements off a flat plane to this projection of a globe, to then project it out onto a tube, to then roll the tube out flat. But that isn't bent geodesics in space-time. That's bastardization to flat Earth elevation angle measurements onto a flat map so that it still works with the stars above their GPs. That's sod all to do with bent geodesics, Veritasium.
surfaces are called geodesics, and we use that.
Wrong. No, you're talking about mapping. You're talking about mapping and mapping projections. That is not a geodesic that you've just described. Idiot. Did you say he was good at this, Adam? Because this is nonsense. It's wrong as well. Adam's gone very quiet.
No, I'm not. Carry on. Carry on.
No, yeah, he's not going to defend him on this one. Not even the guy who suggested you and was favourable to you is defending you in this instance, Veritasium. I'm pulling apart your false equivalence with mapping projections being geodesics. Yeah? And on that note, I'm going to say I would like all of my audience to go to Veritasium and let him know. Love your stuff, love your work. Well done debunking gravity as a force. Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me as he responded to your video where you used a false equivalence to describe geodesics when trying to detail how Einstein's wrong about his non-force force that you can think of as a force because of a bent fourth-dimensional geodesic in space-time as a result of the uneven distribution of mass that isn't mapping projections, you utter clown.
It's interesting how we see this point slightly different. This to me is the deceit, the lie. He knows this isn't an equivalent example, but it is the crux of it because he's now tried to, as you've outlined, that switcheroo from globe to Mercator projection to try and infer that a straight line is a curved line, even though it's not. And we've just had that rocket going straight in space. And what he's now going to try and do is this switcheroo is he's going to shove time in as if time creates this bending of the geodetic. See, this to me is dishonest. It's trying to use one example to get you to understand it. But even if you accept the example, which is false, it's still not an explanation of an invented fourth dimension. In the first case, it's still only 3 dimensions, one of which you're manipulating to put it on a map so it looks curved. Yeah. But this is inventing something that doesn't exist to create a line that's straight in the first place to look bent for somebody else. I think.
Yeah.
Same word, geodesics, for the straight line paths followed by inertial observers through curved spacetime.
Okay, we don't travel through space-time. Time is not a path. Time does not dilate. Time doesn't create a non-force that you can think of as a force. So, no, you can't bend a path in a geodesic. The entire notion is built on a dimension that doesn't exist. Veritasium. Further to that, your mapping comparison, yeah, we're basically calling you a charlatan based on that. I don't know if you picked up on that, Veritasium. We're calling you a fraud. Yeah, because that is not a geodesic. Shout out to Retro Bill. It says, witnessing the birth of the graviolus effect. Right on. Thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill. Really appreciate the support.
Here's another analogy. Imagine you and a friend are standing 1,000 kilometers apart on the equator. Now you both set off due north. Over time, you will come closer together, ultimately bumping into each other at the North Pole. It's as though there was a force pushing you together, but you...
It's as though all of these concepts were derived by taking ever-decreasing circles by way of a measurement to a point in the sky we call Polaris, and how that would ultimately result in circles around that position getting smaller as you get closer until it's at your zenith, and then there's no circles because it's above you. You think that how somehow generates a force? Wow, what a bullshitter. So he's convoluting maps with geodesics, basically.
But again, this again is a very strange way of explaining it, because I don't know what his claim is here, because you're either pointing to the center, and so you're not parallel, or is he claiming that they were parallel, but just didn't realize because in this analogy, the polar map projection, they think isn't polar, it's parallel, but is polar, so they end up walking and meeting it at the point. I don't get it, because again, this is just a convolution of a misinterpretation of 3 dimensions to try and presuppose an effect of a fourth.
Yep.
Isn't this a circle of equal altitude? And they're somewhere on the circle, and as they get near the GP of Polaris, then they're right under it?
Correct. So the outside edge that he started at the equator is the minimum angle to Polaris. And he's moved towards the centre. If you're moving towards that, making angle measurements to give you the latitude lines that were derived on the maps that were then projected on his sphere surface. But the lines that were projected onto his sphere surface in his example, where he's moving up over a curve towards the centre point, in this case Polaris, those lines on his globe came from a flat Earth. Shout out to Unitox Fem, who says, well done, expose them all.
Yeah, well, the latitude lines are from the center of the Earth. The vertex is there from the equatorial plane.
Yeah, measured on a flat plane, then transposed onto this globe surface in his example.
You didn't feel a force, and your friend didn't feel a force.
And there wasn't a force. Gravity isn't a force. And we're not bending fourth-dimensional geodesics in space-time when we walk along an imaginary line that's derived from elevation angle measurements off the equatorial flat plane.
Gravity is just like that force.
There wasn't one. There was no force when we moved towards Polaris. Are you nuts? Did you think that moving towards Polaris generated a force, you clown? Like I say, go and let him know. Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Obviously, I'd expect him to return the favour when he comes back at me with, nah, moving on a bastardised geodesic that's actually a map reification when projected out onto a tube from a sphere that came from a flat Earth. That's a force! When you let him know, Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and I'm sure this massive YouTuber would repay the favour where I get shoved to the bottom of the lists, even if my exact title is typed in. So obviously the only way I'm ever going to get any promotion is if I correct people like Veritasium and they respond and return the favour and put my link in their video. And as I do to them, encourage you go to his video, help him in the algorithm, comment on his video, and if you're so inclined, subscribe. But let him know ultimately that Nathan Oakley 1980 sent you to let him know we responded to his video and all of his misapprehensions about what geodesics are when he uses false equivalence with map projections.
This is the one of the admissions I like, because we've just gone through that and explained how those two people walking, they've somehow imagined a force. Now the forces are generated out of a miscalculation in the first place. Like I said, they assumed they were parallel. They're not parallel. They were never parallel. They were pointing to a center point, the pair of them. Yeah, but now he's analogized that as the effect of gravity. So to me, that's an admission that even in their model, it's an error in the maths that equates to this gravity force. And that's what his analogy shows to me.
Doesn't actually exist. The real reason for you coming together was that you were both on straight paths, geodesics, on a curved surface.
Wrong.
No. So
Wrong.
Even in this, yeah, it's nothing to do with it being on a ball, this effect. It's the simple fact that you weren't parallel in the first point and you were both pointing to a center point.
Yeah, this is utterly incorrect. You are not detailing a geodesic when you detail how moving along a line towards Polaris and the lines that you're traversing are lines that are derived from a flat Earth elevation angle measurement to that star, giving you concentric circles moving inwards, and they're only circular because you're moving closer to the zenith position of the star, which would effectively increase its angle as you approach it. It gets higher in the sky. Well, that is where you get the concept of moving along these lines in the first place. That's not a force, and you're not moving parallel. You're moving closer to a measurement point along a surface that's been taken with a flat Earth angle. That process has then been transposed onto a globe. Now, that's not very useful for navigation, hence when you showed the Mercator projection, what you've actually done is projected that ball back out onto latitude and longitude lines on a grid system on a flat map, so that it's actually useful for measuring angles to stars again. But you missed out the beginning step, where you got these lines from a flat Earth. But you think that if you ignore that step of the acquisition of these lines, that you're detailing moving along on a model that we're not part of, reification fallacy, you think that creates a force and a geodesic because you're actually traversing the curved surface that's going to be mapped out as it is on the left here on a grid. Now, you're not actually travelling along a curved line because you've mapped something that was originally taken from a plane onto a ball, only to then wrap it back out onto a flat grid system. Yeah, that's definitely not moving in a curved path. That's you moving along a line on a grid that's been taken from a circle off a flat plane. Learn your rhetoric. This isn't geodesics.
Astronauts on the space station are weightless.
No, they're not. This is a man in a set. Is it a man? No, it could be a chick. This is a man or woman, depending on your viewpoint. Zar is on a stage. Zar is not in space because that would violate the second law of thermodynamics. If she was falling around in a geodesic or in a gravitational loop, ever perpetually falling around the surface of a sphere Earth, well, then there would be no gas at surface level to breathe. If the sky was a vacuum for this numpty to be floating around in it, then all of the gas would leave the area of volume that it's currently occupying and enter the area of space available to it in line with the second law of thermodynamics. It's called entropy. So no, every aspect of every claim that has ever come from space, including any rockets that you're not really on because you're as valid in your rocket ship space example with your spacesuit as this chick or guy is. She's not in space and neither were you. You both created it in the same manner. Hers is just a more sophisticated way of faking it to pretend that she's in space or he's in space. Now, let's get to the brass tacks of what is not happening here. They are not falling around a sphere because we've got a presupposed Kepler-based orbital motion around anything ever, nor have we got geodesics in a fourth dimensional space-time that we don't exist in, and nor do we have a second law of thermodynamics sky vacuum to perpetually fall around in a tin can on. Go ahead, whoever that was.
He was also wrong as well. He said his words were words to the effect of astronauts on the ISS are weightless. That's not even their claim. The claim is that the Earth's in a Einstein's claim is that the Earth's in a gravitational field, and it's the field acting on the ISS, which gives them a 10% gravitational effect or something along them lines. So when he's citing that, that's not even their position.
Yeah, it's 8.6 newtons instead of 9.8, but because they're falling, they're weightless. So the analogy there of the space station will be because of the geodesic press play instead of me.
So he's not right to say that they're weightless because according to the narrative, the Einstein's narrative, they are under a gravitational effect in the ISS. So he's still wrong.
That means they too are inertial observers traveling on a geodesic.
No one's travelling along time. No, time's not a dimension to travel along. And what you're demonstrating in this example is by the looks of things, not even quite, but three-dimensional Euclidean grid-based system. There is no fourth dimensional time being demonstrated, and the dimension that it's moving along is an axis in one of those three dimensions. You are not showing time as a dimension to travel on in this example. You can't show time as a dimension to travel on in any example because time, a concept that we have derived from the celestial objects moving to give us an elapsed integer and value to ascribe to it, is nothing to do with dimensions. You can't travel on them, you can't move through them, you can't go back in time, you can't bend it, you can't dilate it. Time is a description.
But the Earth curves space-time around it.
No, it doesn't.
Which is why their straight-line path appears as a helix.
So what you described earlier as moving over the bastardization of a flat Earth elevation angle measurement description of Polaris and the latitude lines transposed onto a globe, that being a geodesic. Now it's because of the fourth dimensional warping because of the mass of Earth in space causing a helix. No, definitely not. Not only does that not comport with your bent reification of a globe model that's come from a flat Earth elevation angle measurement to assume that the curved path you're not actually travelling on when you move through those concentric circles based on a flat Earth concept being a geodesic, that's nothing to do with a helix for a globe Earth in a sky vacuum bending time itself, when time's not a dimension to bend. It's utterly absurd.
It only looks like a circular orbit if you...
Looks like? When have you seen this? Why aren't you showing us? Is it like you showing us in space when you've got your little spacesuit on, pretending to be the men in the ISS? Like they're pretending to be men in space? Like lions pretend to be in Narnia? Yeah, this isn't something you're ever going to see, so why are you telling me about how I will observe it?
You forget the time dimension.
Did I? No, I definitely did not.
Don't forget, we are all moving through space and time.
Are we now? Do you want to show me time as a little path that I can travel along? Because it isn't. Go on, whoever's from either opening their mic, leaving it open, or wants to say something. Anthony. No, doesn't.
That was me.
Space-time.
There.
Oh, go ahead.
That's just the fundamentals of the claim. Look at what he's done. That spiral, which is in 3 dimensions, is somehow now representative of time, this dimension that we can't quantify. I don't get this claim, Tony, this bit, because again, it's what is time here? Is it just the path through 3D space? Because that's all I'm seeing here. It's just the spiraling path of the Earth supposedly transiting through space and this spiraling around it. Now they're claiming, and this was the point I don't get, what's bending here? Because there's apparently that ISS is going in a straight line. So
it's sophistry. He's just applying sophistry to make it sound like it's intelligent, and he's trying to deceive the audience. This is like, I remember when Nathan used to not attack, but criticize me for like getting into the nuances of their arguments. And now I prefer to just kill it and nip it in the bud, because like, if you allow them to start talking about this nonsense, you can replace the word gravity with Father Christmas or Narnia and have the exact same conversation. But if you have the conversation, the more you talk about it, the more it seems like it's a real thing. Now I prefer to just say, can you just define it? Because if you can't define it, then there is no conversation. But if you allow someone to describe it and talk about curves, straight lines, and concepts and time bending and all that woo-woo, right? You are accepting that you're going to allow them to bullshit you with nonsense, sophistry, right? You're accepting that. Is that constructive? Well, when you're learning the topic, yeah, it's constructive because you're working your way through where they get up to before they get stuck. But when you've finished learning it and you've got nothing more to learn about it because you realize it's all nonsense, there is no point in having the conversation. So now it's like, you can talk about Narnia as much as you want. You can describe how the lamppost works without wires to it. And you can explain how there's new photo, whatever, to make the bulb work. But does it make it real? And the answer is, of course, no, it's Narnia. Well, the same applies for gravity, the way he's describing it, or getting it right or wrong within Einstein. Minute you start talking about gravity, unless you define it first, you're bringing it into a world, you're making it a thing when it never existed in the first place. It's sophistry. It's pure sophistry.
Are you off mute?
It only took
Kiwi?
you 7 years.
Yes. We can hear you echoing.
I wanted to learn it.
This whole thing seems to be the definition. He's going to get to it a bit more as to why. He's going to get to the point of what it is as standing on the surface, what all of this nonsense, how this convolutes to how we feel that experience. He is building to that point, is my point, Tony. This is all a description of gravity.
This is the standard bent sheet analogy for curved spacetime.
Ooh, we've got a sheet. Sorry, that's very much a fabric in 3-dimensional physical reality. So you're going to now tell me that this 3-dimensional sheet represents time? You see, no, I don't buy this. No. You rolling an orange on a sheet doesn't represent time as a dimension. This is stupid. This is a shell game. This is you conning people. So you're going to tell me that a sheet is time? No, sheets aren't time. No, rolling oranges on them aren't bending them. That's time. Because you can't bend time and you can't show it me. What you can do is reify it in a 3-dimension and then roll balls around on it. Do you think I'm thick? As thick as the rest of the Western world? Yeah, you obviously do, because that's who you're appealing to with your 18 million subscribers. Or is it 13? I can't quite see.
But I think this demo is misleading. It allows
You're not kidding, it's misleading, because you're not showing me time and you're not showing me time bending.
You to fool yourself into thinking you understand general relativity.
No, it didn't fool me into thinking anything other than you're stretching out a bit of fabric and telling me it's time.
When
Hold
the
on.
intuition you're
Can I say something?
Push can.
Isn't it called the fabric of space-time? Come on. He's got it. He's on point.
Yeah, but he's got a polyblend as opposed to space-time.
Oh, dear.
you're actually drawing on is just that objects like to fall towards the middle of a well.
What, like clouds? Clouds fall towards the middle of wells, do they? I don't see clouds falling towards the middle of wells. What about helium balloons? Do they fall towards the middle of wells? Sort of like Anthony was saying earlier. Anthony was pointing out that you always like to make the example with the downward bias. I wonder why that is.
Just notice now that he's going to start talking about how things like to fall towards the center of a well, which isn't even true anyway. But what he's doing is he's making a paradigm shift now. He's done all the sophistry nonsense, right? And he's clearly told you that there's no such thing as a downward acceleration or a gravitational field. But now he's going to talk about a gravitational field. So just notice that he's totally changed the power. He's now off on a different tangent now, where he is going to talk about the gravitational field that he previously said didn't exist.
Yeah, it's going to be a well, pulling things towards the middle of it. All right, like it's got some influence over the things then. Oh, well, that's why you think of it as a force.
But in general relativity, there is no gravitational force.
So how the hell is it going to pull things to the centre when you reify it into a fabric and stretch it out and roll balls around it?
What you should be thinking about is objects traveling on a straight line path through space-time.
Well, then they wouldn't be moving towards the centre and things wouldn't be falling around and influenced by the stuff at the centre as they fall around in a perpetual circle called an orbital motion. But we should think of that orbital motion as being a straight line when you show time in a three-dimensional graph. Well, I don't really understand how any of this works because I'm not really being shown time to understand how it's going to bend this path that is straight, but we don't feel the curve of the straight path that we're travelling when we move towards the centre of something. It's all nonsense.
It just so happens that space-time is curved around massive objects.
No, what you actually did was bend the three-dimensional depiction that you have and then insert a CGI rendering of a globe Earth we don't stand on that has been derived from flat Earth elevation angle measurements that you thought were a geodesic when you moved up the globe model after transposition from the angle measurements taken from a plane. Now, that's not a geodesic, neither is this diagram, because we're not seeing fourth-dimensional space-time to have you claim that it's being bent in a geodesic, as opposed to moving up a map that's a model that came from a flat Earth.
So that straight line path doesn't look like a straight line.
That's because it isn't. You've got it spiralling up around a sphere. So in three-dimensional terms, it very much isn't straight. But you're telling me I should think of it as though it's straight because I can't see the time dimension that's bending it? Bollocks.
Matter tells space-time how to curve.
Does it? Has it got a walkie-talkie?
And space-time tells matter how to move.
Does it? So they've got like a two-way radio, matter and time talking to one another about what they should be doing at the weekend? Utterly absurd, you utter clown. No, my friend, Einstein speculated that matter tells space-time how to curve, and space-time tells matter how to move, but that is, get a pen, Veritasium, write this down, quote, bollocks. Made up by Einstein, end quote, Nathan Oakley Flat Earth debate. Did you get it down? Did you write a pen? Bollocks made up by Einstein isn't what causes matter to curve. Just because Einstein said so. It's nonsense. Because what you'd have to do is show me space-time. Then show me how it tells matter to curve or move.
And
Total
that assumes
nonsense.
that matter curves in the first place, which it doesn't.
It's utterly absurd.
This is the seller, isn't it? You've been through all that, and now you can walk away clever and recite that little bit of Einstein, yeah. And if you can recite that, that seems to be the crux that you somehow understand it, or how you cog this yourself. You repeat that statement so until it makes sense somehow.
Gas
that's
molecules.
The crux of what he's saying. It does work. It does work. It does work.
Gas molecules tell measurements how to measure, and measurements tell gas particles how to bend. tosses ball in air, walks backwards. Wanker! Yeah, I can make up total shite too, like Einstein. But just saying that matter and space-time are somehow influential on each other doesn't make it true. Doesn't mean you can walk off with a smug little grin on your face, walking backwards, tossing a ball, thinking that you've shown that to be true, when it's utter horseshit.
Now let's go back to deep space.
Okay. Let's do that. Let's travel from the high-pressure gas that we're all enjoying breathing, past the Kármán line where your rocket pretended to go, into an area of volume that gas isn't filling in violation of natural law. Let's do that. Let's see if he cuts to space.
What happens if...
We seem to be in the same CGI world with a cartoon. I thought you just said, let's go back to space. Did you think that little magic trick of pretending that we're actually going to go to a place that isn't real would slip us by when you didn't transition to the place that you're claiming we're going to? Maybe you should cut to a picture of you in a spacesuit again, because that'll convince me.
If you turn on the rocket thrusters and...
Really? So you're doing this? No, we didn't do any transition. We're still in the CGI world of a pretend place that isn't real, with a starry backdrop. Meanwhile, gas pressure that we all breathe would vacate immediately. In fact, it would have never developed in the first place if the sky was a vacuum. The very first particle of gas would come out the ground, expand into the area of volume and never return, as would every single gas particle ever produced on a sphere Earth. It would all vacate into the area of volume and never develop pressure. So no, given that we have gas pressure to traverse in the rocket, I'm going to say that the area beyond it that you're not showing doesn't exist, because it violates a very fundamental law of nature. That would be entropy.
Accelerate at 9.8 meters per second squared. Well, someone outside would see all objects remain stationary.
Would they? No, in your graphic, and according to Einstein with his bent geodesics, it would.
While the floor of the rocket accelerates into them.
What a crock of crap. I am so irritated with this. I don't know how you managed to sell it to us like he's debunking gravity. He's not doing anything of the sort.
He's about to do... This is flat Earth society.
Inside the rocket, everything would appear to accelerate down to the ground.
Show me. Show us.
And you would feel a force pushing up on your feet.
Would we? Says who? I mean, are we doing this in the fourth dimensional realm of space-time bending? No, that doesn't exist.
The same force that's pushing up on you as you watch this video.
Really? See, in your example, even though I've pulled apart the Narnia world that it's taking place in, you've got a rocket beneath your feet now, haven't you? You understand that in your example, rocket beneath you pushing. Yeah, regardless of where it's taking place. That's quite a considerable force making you move. But what's that you say? It's the same as the force applied to me now while I do precisely nothing? You total clown. No. You see, if I put a rocket up my ass, I'm going to be moving pretty sharply. Yeah? But you think that's the same as me doing nothing when you compare it to a CGI rocket world in a sky vacuum? Definitely not, you total fraud. Quick shout out to Unitox Femu. Now let's go deep into space. Can't stop laughing. Thank you very much for the super chat. Unitox Femu, aka Sasha. Really appreciate the support. Oh, ad break. Okay, any comments? Got over 125 people watching. Or we did have a second ago.
I got a comment. So mass attracts mass, the old explanation of gravity. Now it's space-time in the fourth dimension. So mass attracting mass was never experienced or observed, and they needed to, make it something else. So they said it's space-time bending, which has never been observed either. So what's going to follow these two lies?
Well, there's another angle to consider. So because mass wasn't attracting mass, and they realized they needed a big distraction so that people would not realize that they're redefining gravity. So like, what do they normally do when they need a massive distraction? They create a world event. And if you release the redefinition of gravity from a force into a not force, and you do that under the cover of night, in the sense that there's a World War I, then you're going to be able to deceive the masses, because whilst World War I's happening, no one cares about science because we're all talking about Adolf Hitler instead. So whilst we're all learning about Blitzkrieg, actually they're rewriting the textbooks in the background, and that's what's really happened. And then when everyone gets back to school and all the generation above them have all been killed off by war, they'll get taught that gravity is a force still, even though science doesn't say it's a force anymore.
Right, just for anybody in the comment section after the fact that's going to tell me about Anthony's confusion of the two different wars, I don't want to hear it. His example stands. It's not relevant. I don't want to hear it. You'll just get your comment deleted. Doesn't matter.
Why did I get...
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Not important. Your point was valid.
World War One.
It's exactly the same as being at rest on the surface of Earth.
No, it isn't. Having a rocket at my ass and being at rest are very different things, my friend. Yeah, again, you're tossing this helmet in the air like somehow you've proven that you've gone to this second law of thermodynamics violation sky vacuum to make your point valid. No, my friend. You are faking it like the shysters on the ISS are faking it. You are not in space and neither are they. Yeah, tossing your helmet in the air like you've just made a really good point when you say that having a rocket up your ass is the same as sitting still. That's not a good point to toss your helmet in the air on. Yeah? You hearing me?
A big claim, though, isn't it? Because this is what I said, it relates to the Flat Earth Society. This is their claim that the Earth's going upwards at 9.8, so everything's rising to meet it. That seems to be the crux of his claim here for the rocket in space. That's why he's now got weight, as he says. That's why he's now the same as when he's on the stationary Earth. Yeah, that's what being stationary is. So he's now using that analogy as to a ball in space. Now, if it was moving at a scale, flat disk, then it possibly could be analogized. But he's got a ball going in space. So now there's only the direction of travel that can create that force that he's saying is creating the upward force to give him his weight. I can only apply in one spot on a ball. Everyone else, that analogy doesn't hold true because the rocket thrusters aren't on the floor of the rocket, are they? They're on the side of the rocket.
Yeah, well, what he's managed to do is invent a scale that has 0, the same as moving. Someone's off mute in G+. So he's moved the scale, and at the end he's summarised exactly what I said at the beginning. Rather than having the guy falling, having subjected himself to an acceleration as a default because he's gone up, displaced the air, and is now going to return to equilibrium when he falls off the roof. According to him, that's not an acceleration from his vantage point. Everything around him's moving up. Right, okay. So therefore 0. Okay. Well, when you're out in space moving along a geodesic with a rocket up your ass, that's the same. That's also 0. So they're basically the same. And now when I summarise it like I've just done, it draws attention to how absurd it is. But when he does it with what? 12, no, not 12 minutes, about 6 minutes in between the two. Doesn't seem so stupid, does it? Why didn't the helmet float around with you? Yeah, it's a bit like one of the continuity errors when someone's showing you something on the ISS and then they drop some keys or something. And you go, whoa, when the key's floating around. Yes, because your set's as fake as their set.
Because we are at rest on the surface of Earth.
What, like the ISS are when they film in studios?
Now I want to ask you,
are you... Another statement of truth there, Nate. Just rewind that 10 seconds.
That's just when they hit a gravity well.
Because we are at rest on the surface of Earth.
Yeah, damn Skippy.
Because we are at rest on the surface of Earth. Yeah, we are. Damn right.
Now I want to ask you, are you watching this video in an inertial frame of reference?
Right, well, that would imply that there's some movement to determine in the first instance. Yeah? And it's the globe claim that Earth's a non-inertial turning reference. So we might be on a sticky wicket with the claim of Coriolis based on the next statement he makes. We'll see.
Well, I mean, do you feel weightless?
Sorry, I don't tend to feel my own weight. I can qualify my weight when I displace a spring on a weight measuring device, like a scale. But in terms of me observing my own weight, no, I don't believe I do. I mean, does anybody else generally concern themselves, other than when they look in the mirror, with the aesthetic appearance of their flabby skin, if they are. Other than that, noticing their weight, who's aware at a conscious level of their own weight?
Oh, I know someone that does. What was his name now? The old guy from Ireland. He said that he feels his own weight. He feels gravity pulling on his own body to give himself weight. What was his name? The old guy.
Buzz Aldrin.
Highlander or something like that.
No, it was the guy that called everyone. What's his name? He did some observations, didn't he? I can't remember what his name is now, but he was really rough and aggressive towards me towards the end. But he said that he can feel his own weight because he can feel gravity pulling on his own body to give himself weight because he can feel the weight of his arm when he sat on the chair. That was what he said.
Okay.
What was his bloody name? Can't remember his name.
No. So you are not an inertial observer. Your situation is exactly the same as someone accelerating on a rocket ship in deep space.
Really? See, according to the globe claim, Earth is a non-inertial turning reference frame, and the observation of things drifting at 15 degrees an hour takes place in the inertial reference frame. So this is a bit of a problem I hadn't spotted before. I'm going to have to give this some ponderance. Is Einstein's geodesics in contravention of Coriolis effect? This could be more interesting than meets the eye.
And let me be clear, I don't mean that being at rest in a gravitational field is like accelerating in a rocket.
Sorry, didn't you say that we weren't in any gravitational fields? That Einstein basically he deleted them. That was your opening gambit, that there wasn't any. But now you're telling us how we wouldn't notice being in a gravitational field. So the implication being that we are in a gravitational field. So Anthony, high five, called it. So you're a double-speaking clown then? So which is it? Are we in a gravitational field or not? Because according to the start of this video, no, we're not.
I mean, it is the exact same thing. You are accelerating and there is no gravitational field.
Right, why am I accelerating again? Is it because I've got a rocket up my arse that I don't experience? Because according to you, I'm only accelerating because I'm the same at rest when there's a man in space that we can't experience with a rocket up his arse. So that's why I'm accelerating. You notice how I summarised the 6 minutes of bullshit down to, according to you and this rhetoric, me at rest is the same as man on rocket, and I said no. But based on what, me not agreeing with that, now I'm accelerating, and no, definitely not.
Gravitational fields do not exist. Now, I know that sounds crazy.
It does when you've just told you how we are experiencing one because we're not experiencing it. Therefore, it does exist by implication, but then you immediately double-speak and say that they don't exist. Now, it does sound crazy because you are crazy when you peddle this total nonsense.
But come with me for a minute.
Why? Why? Should we go with you into the gravitational field that we don't experience because it doesn't exist? If he dares start telling us about how I'm a stick man in 2 dimensions, I'm gonna scream.
This is you.
No, it fucking isn't! You stupid wanker with a beard. You fuckwit who doesn't understand 3-dimensionality. No, I am not a stick man. Yeah? And I'm not a stick man imagining a 3rd dimension that doesn't exist, so you can transpose that into a 4th dimension that doesn't exist for me as an actual 3-dimensional person. You stupid clown. That is not me. That is a page with a drawing of a 2-dimensional entity that doesn't exist, and is in no way comparable to the 3-dimensionality that I actually experience. That is not me. If you think that's you, that's because we can draw a little smiling face on this stick man, play some clown music, and you can pretend to be it.
In standard Newtonian physics,
Go on.
I was only going to say, no, he's only going to ascribe G to you. Don't worry, he's not taking you to another dimension in this one, I don't think. He's just going to stick a G on you.
we draw your weight force, the force of gravity pushing you.
So, force of gravity, we draw as a down. Okie dokie. So therefore, everything on this page that's drawn with pen will go down. So if I draw the man holding a helium balloon, does that have FG down as well? 9.8 meters per second squared as detailed earlier in your geodesic in space-time that doesn't exist. So the helium balloon, down, FG, correct? Yeah? You've got that I've just been screwed look on your face, my friend. Number one, I'm not a stick man in 2 dimensions. Number two, not all things go down. It seems like this notion of gravity being a force pulling things to the centre of Earth is being assumed after you've taken it to pieces based on bending geodesics in space-time that don't exist. And now you're back to describing a downward vector. Why? Is it because you don't understand what you're talking about? Yeah, it's because you're a clown 2-dimensional stick man.
You down, and the normal force from the floor pushing you up.
So what normal force would that be pushing me up? What if we assume that we're in the Flat Earth Society rhetoric being pushed up on a pizza pie at 9.8 meters per second? Because we'd have to be to measure elevation angle measurements off the pizza pie to give you your bent geodesic along a map that's been projected out from a sphere onto a tube after acquisition of angles from a flat plane. So no, there is no force pushing up from the ground. What are you babbling about?
This was the only bit where, you know, when you said, "Oh, is Coriolis going to come in?" There's 2 forces, I think, there, couldn't there? There could be buoyancy from the air, and also centrifugal effect from the supposed Coriolis would be counter effects against these supposed down.
We say these forces are equal and opposite, so there's no net force on you, so
no force. So your made-up bullshit downward force is counteracted by the upward force. Oh, I see. So in terms of the helium balloon or the clouds, what's going on there then? Net force 0 on me when I displace air. Well, if Brian's logic was around, he'd be pointing out that that rhetoric would lead to an assertion of things weighing, what, more or less in a vacuum, given that there's no downward bias of the gas being pulled down, go boom boom at 9.8 meters per second, something that it does not do. So the displacement argument in this rhetoric requires gas to be pulled down at 9.8 meters per second. It's not doing that. Were you unaware of that, Veritasium? Where does your gas come into this? Given that your stickman's going to have displaced it, and a helium balloon's going to be going in the opposite direction to your net FG force. Opposed at net force 0 from an upward vector, because what, Earth's being pushed up at 9.8 meters per second? Definitely not.
You are not accelerating. But in general relativity, gravity
Nathan,
is not a...
sorry, mate, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to add something to that, because I've been listening in the chat. My name's Rob. Don't mean to interrupt anyone. Just,
feel free.
Tell me to shut
Feel
up
free.
if you want me to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, mate. Yeah. I just I've heard a few times you say that the Earth isn't moving up. I'm just curious to why you rule that out as a possibility entirely.
Why rule the Earth moving up?
Yeah.
It's not really a positive claim that I have to defend not happening. It's an assertion that has to be proven to be happening by the person who makes the positive assertion. You understand?
Let me have this, Nathan.
No, I'm with you, mate. Yeah, but the only issue I've got with that is obviously we all experience density layers. There is density layers, so the question's got to be what could be causing that. And motion of the reference frame moving upwards is a possible explanation for that, which can be demonstrated by if you've got a bottle of water and you accelerate it in a certain direction, the water hits the back of the container and the air pushes to the front of the container, so the air shows the direction of acceleration. Whereas, so when you've got a bottle of water and you drop it and you let it go, if it was accelerating downwards, I don't know what anyone believes in this thing. I'm just I've just been listening, surely. But if you drop it, if the bottle was accelerating downwards, then the water would come out the top and the air would go to the bottom, showing it's accelerating. But it doesn't do that. So another possible explanation for that would be that the Earth is moving towards the object and it's not moving at all. If you're looking at someone in a lift, if you're outside the lift looking at someone in the lift and they're going up and they drop a tennis ball, it's a deceleration, it's not an acceleration. Sorry, mate, go on.
Rob, I'll have this for you, mate. So do you agree that there's more density at the ground level than there is halfway up a mountain, and there's even less at the top of the mountain? You agree, because it's a gradient,
yes.
Correct? If you think of the Earth as a radiator and it emits heat's going to be more hot towards the radiator and then less hot as you go away from the radiator, right? If the ground is creating all the gas that's creating the gas pressure that we breathe, which it does, it's called the biogeochemical cycle, That explains why there's a density gradient towards the ground. It's got nothing to do with being pulled. It's got nothing to do with accelerating up. But if you think that it might be because it might be that we might be accelerating up, think about Australia and England on the ball Earth model. Both of them can't.
No, I don't think stop. He hasn't claimed that.
Yeah, but that's never a literal.
Hello, everyone, stop. He hasn't claimed that, Anthony. He foisting globe Earth rhetoric onto him, where he hasn't actually stated that he might be a globe. I don't care, but he hasn't actually put that in.
I'm not a glober, mate. Just to be safe, I'm not a glober at all. Yeah.
No, I didn't think you were. No, but Anthony. But apart from that bit, Anthony's bang on. So in terms of why there's a gradient, we've got the gas dispersing, but as it expands out, it's going to get less, and then there's more produced at ground, replacing the stuff at the ground that's dispersed upwards. So you're going to have more at the place of origin than you are higher up. But the fact that it's made it up is because it's dispersing into the volume.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying, mate. But would that mean that objects are still getting accelerated downwards?
Well, not the gas. No, the gas is going up.
No, not gas, But like, if you've got a bottle of water and you drop it, the water doesn't displace, which it would do under acceleration.
Balloon, Rob?
Dense things accelerate down.
Stop talking through
and
it.
they're denser than the surrounding.
Hello. I've had to close the line on you guys 3 times. He's just trying to get to the end of a sentence before you all jump on him. I didn't hear the end of your claim in terms of what would happen if you drop a glass of water. What's your question?
Sorry, mate. Yeah, I was just getting a phone call there, so I don't know if you can hear me. Sorry. No, what I was saying was, if you've got a bottle of water in your hand, for example, right, and you accelerate it left or right, like the water goes to the back of the container and the air goes to the front. Like the air kind of points in the direction of acceleration. Right? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, and you're comparing that to a water at rest in a bottle.
Yeah, so when you've got a bottle of water in your hand and you let it go, it doesn't displace. Like the water doesn't go to the back and the air go to the bottom as it falls. So like it's kind of showing that there is no acceleration towards the Earth.
But it's accelerating towards the Earth when you drop it.
No, that's what I'm saying. If it was accelerating towards the Earth, the water would displace.
But it is. It is accelerating. When you drop it, it goes down.
Rob?
Yeah, the water goes down, but it doesn't come shooting out the top of the bottle. That's what I'm saying. So it's like, if you move it left and right, it would do that. No, when it's open. When it's open, mate,
Okay, fine. We got your example, but your speculation is that that effect that you're describing, right or wrong, is cause to assume that we've got an upward acceleration?
It's just a possible explanation. I'm not trying to claim one way or the other, mate. I'm just trying to figure it out. Like I'm just trying to get all sides of the argument, just trying to get closer to the truth. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't have belief. Do you know what I mean? I kind of sorry, mate.
Can I add something like hopefully it'll clear something up, but look, whenever there is something acceleration due to whatever cause, I like to say relative density is equilibrium, but there's still going to be a buoyant effect on whatever is in the object, right? As it is displacing. So if it's accelerating, then the less dense aspects that might be within, like an air bubble, it's going to go opposite direction, all that, because buoyancy will still apply to whatever is happening when there's a force applied, whatever that force might be caused by or whatever, doesn't matter, right? Material will displace as long as it can move freely. When it is accelerating, there will be buoyancy effects happening, separating the dense from the less dense within the object accelerating. It just happens.
Rob, let me ask you a question. So, assuming you had a really great
I don't have all the answers, by the way, so don't think I do. Yeah?
Pardon?
Well, go on. Sorry, mate.
I'm assuming you had a really great red weekend and you didn't have a miserable blue weekend. But if you think of a helium balloon and in your home office at home, you stick it on the underside of a shelf, so it's stuck to the underside of the shelf, they would never describe that as any kind of gravitational explanation. And when pushed, they will say, oh, that's buoyant force. Now, buoyant force itself relies on gravity being a force, and we know gravity is not being it isn't a force. But we do see the helium balloon get trapped under a shelf or stuck against the ceiling all the time. Kids' parties, the kid lets go of the balloon, it sticks to the ceiling. They never give that. They always talk about a bottle of water falling to the ground. But when you ask them about a helium balloon, they don't want to talk about the helium balloon because that doesn't fall down, that falls up. Now, they might have an explanation, but the point is that it's not falling down. So when they say gravity's pulling things down, or when they say things fall down, it isn't even true, because we see the phenomena doing the other way as well, which they don't want to talk about.
I agree with you.
No, but they'll say that the gas just goes up and then forms the uppermost layer and sits on top like a fluid, right? If they actually know the mechanics, that's what they'll say, right? Problem is most globers don't know their own mechanics.
Can I just point out another demonstration you can do, like on the topic of helium balloons and things like that? So, like, I don't know, like if you drive a car, for example, right, and you hang a helium balloon from the roof of the car, and you put like water like in a container in the back of your car, when you accelerate your car forwards, the water goes to the back, but the helium balloon gets pushed to the front of the car again. So the helium balloon, the gas, shows the direction of acceleration. So when you let go of a helium balloon, just like in your everyday life, and it goes up, it's the same thing, but just flipped 90 degrees, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So if you
that's incorrect.
False equivalence.
No, it's incorrect. When you accelerate in the car, the air goes backwards as well. When it hits the back of the car, it then waves forward, which is what pushes the balloon.
Of that, mate, it doesn't. When you hang a helium balloon in a car and you accelerate forward, the helium balloon goes to the front of the car.
Yeah,
you're not listening, man.
How?
That's another question. Exactly, it's getting put. There's a compression at the back of the car.
It's then pushes the helium. When you're talking about the applied forces. The other thing with the analogies is the water in the bottle in the car it is contained, isn't it? Which is why it angles. I think Rachie mentioned this, was when you drop the water in the bottle, both the water and the bottle aren't contained in any way in the direction of the force downward, as they're both falling together. But when you've got the acceleration in the car, the water is free moving within the container now. So you can't consider the two situations the same, because the container is rigid in one and free moving in the other. So they're not.
I was pointing out that like an explanation of helium going in a particular direction can be explained by motion of the reference frame. The same thing. Like, I'm not trying to I'm just pointing out like demonstration.
You just can't compare the two to make the assumption, is what I'm saying, because they're different situations.
Just going back to the radiator analogy I gave earlier on, we have the sun, and you accept that the sun evaporates water off the surface, right? And that evaporating water is water vapor. That's the hydrological cycle, right? Powered by the sun. But the sun also does many other cycles, and it's called the biogeochemical cycle. So when the gradient's being created at ground level, ground being water or land, it's creating a concentration of gas that slowly disperses into the available volume from ground level. That's where we're getting the upward perception from, or the downward bias from, depending on which position you take. But that's powered by the sun. And we were taught it when we were in school, like when we were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I remember drawing the diagrams, and we were drawing the mountain and the ocean and the red currents going one way, the blue currents going the other way. And we were describing that cycle. I'm pretty sure all of us remember doing that in school. But when it comes to this topic and you try applying why it is that there's a gradient, people just can't connect the two. But the reason why there's a gradient is because we're contained, and there is a localized sun that's heating up the area that's around the sun, like relatively local to it. Its proximity to the sun is heating up that environment, and that's where we get the gradient from. So when you were saying before about, like, is it possible that the direction of travel, I like Earth moving up, is causing the gradients identifying the direction of travel? It's a false equivalence, because it's actually caused by the sun causing water, causing nitrogen, causing oxygen to be developed or grown at ground level. It then disperses up and out, and that's where we get the gradient from. So it's not direct, it's not initiating a direction of travel. It's actually a consequence of the heat of the sun warming up our environment, and that's where the gradient comes from.
A shout out to Elvis Kavovic, who says balloon goes forward in the accelerating car because of air displacement, as Adam stated. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate the support, Elvis Kavovic. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay.
Gas is not susceptible to momentum, so if something accelerates, the gas is going to want to stay still So it's going to displace and then cause even lighter gas to move forward towards where you're accelerating at.
I think we can draw a line under this description of second-order entropic effects in terms of relative density disequilibrium. But thank you for your question, Rob.
Yeah, just one last little thing, and then I'll leave you to it, mate. Yeah, it's like the only issue I've got with that is like in that explanation that has just been said about like what's creating the density layers, about like the sun and all that shit. But it's like the problem is though, then objects would still be accelerated downwards. But in that demonstration, when you drop the bottle, it shows no acceleration whatsoever.
We just covered this. No, items aren't all moving down. Some go up, like gas, when it's created at ground level and disperses upwards.
Yeah, I know, but if you've got a bottle of water...
We've covered your bottle. You said something else, as opposed to rinse and repeat the exact same thing for the third time that we've just covered? Was there something else?
You haven't answered it, mate. You're just like giving other possible explanations,
was there
which
something
is okay,
else,
it's fine.
Rob? Was there something else, Rob, as opposed to the same thing again?
You're talking to me, you little prick.
Fuck you. Get out of my show, you stupid scouse wanker.
Hey. No need for the wanker.
Only force on you are these normal forces pushing you up. So you are accelerating upwards.
No, we're not. No, we're not accelerating upwards.
My question to him was, what are we accelerating up to? I mean, because Rob was asking that question. Does it feel like we're accelerating? I mean, what are we accelerating up to?
We're not.
Where are we at?
We're not. It's an equivocation where we've got a rocket up our ass, and that's the same according to him.
Well, you need the rocket to shove you into further disequilibrium that they call orbit, but we say you're pushing further away from your point of equilibrium. So you need a force to do that, and the rocket is that force. But if you didn't have the rocket, you ain't going to get away from your equilibrium point. You're going to get towards it unless there's something stopping you from getting there. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to conflate the ability or the necessary nature of pushing you away from equilibrium with, I don't even know what he's doing, like this rocket idea of like there's someone pushing you from behind, and like it's nonsense. All of these answers all just come back from the egg. The egg in the water test, it explains everything once you understand that the egg is sat in a medium. And what Rob was struggling with his bottle of water example. If he makes that bottle like 1,000,000 times bigger, so it's like a hot air balloon size, but then fill that instead of with water, fill that with helium, that balloon, that bottle of water now, this big balloon thing, is not going to go down anymore. It's going to go up. And that's the bit Rob couldn't get his head around, because he sees it as a downward, and it's not a downward. It's relative to the medium it's in, and Rob doesn't get it.
And that's the problem, man.
Things are
You hit
still
it right in the head.
accelerating down even if they're moving up.
Hold on, Anthony's got it right in hit it right in the head.
Not moving up relative to what? I mean, relative to the flip chart and the floor and basically everything in this room. But all of those things are in your frame of reference, which you know is not
relative
inertial.
To the medium.
Relative.
Yeah, relative to the medium.
There is no medium. It's all relative now.
He's removed it and shoved a rocket up your ass, Anthony, and that's the same as you sitting still, remember?
Yeah, but he said relative to what? The whiteboard, I think he said. Well, relative to the medium. So if he says relative to the medium, then all of a sudden you don't need any accelerating frames of reference or a bystander or whatever. All of it becomes subject to the medium and the thing that you're talking about, the subject matter, be it a bottle of water for Rob or a helium balloon for us. It's always relative to the medium. They never want to talk about the medium.
Yeah, but you can't have a medium and everything being relative at the same time. That's the point.
Relative to everything in my rocket ship, I'm not accelerating.
Yeah, you can, Arwin.
What you need, if you really want to...
Are you really going to thrash this out? Okay, go ahead.
You can. So Arwin just said you can't have something that's relative to a medium, right? Is that what you just said?
No, you can't have everything be relative and have a medium that is just there.
No, he's right, Anthony.
If you have an anchor point of a medium, then you can't have everything being relative, because it's going to be relative against the medium.
Yeah, he's comparing relativity with relative density disequilibrium, basically, Anthony, in shorthand. He's right.
Well, obviously, I don't understand his point, then I missed it.
It's just giving you shorthand for relativity. That's all he's doing. But he's saying you can't have a density-specific disequilibrium if you're going to describe an upward acceleration relative to a reference frame, i.e. relativity versus relative density disequilibrium. That's all Arwen's saying, and he's right.
Correct.
But the egg in its medium is, you can describe that as relativity, because the relativity argument is the egg relative to its medium. You can. But
it's just excluded it.
Transpose.
That's your objection. You're objecting because it's excluded it.
No, I'm objecting it because when he said that you can't, it doesn't matter. Carry on.
Okay.
Now, my point is if
we got
you
your point.
argue
We
that
got
it's
it.
all relative against one another, then as soon as you basically set a medium, then it's no longer relative. Then it becomes like it has a very distinct relation to a position in space. Euclidean space becomes invoked, etc.
It becomes medium specific. Yeah, that's Anthony's point. It becomes medium specific if you say it, which he isn't.
Measure your acceleration is someone in an inertial frame of reference.
In what medium? I'll just add it before these two argue about it.
Like the guy who fell off the roof. And
No, he was in air, wasn't he? Now, let's say for the sake of argument, because I can give this example, that, you know, some little village, really quaint, with a really high steepled church, happens to be at the bottom of a valley where they're going to clog it all up for a dam, precisely as happened in Wales, where an entire village, including the church, is at the bottom of a massive pool of water. Now, in that scenario, I can go to the top of the roof and jump off. Now, what do you think is going to happen when I jump off that church roof? Am I going to go down, go boom, boom, or am I going to float to the top of the water, given that I'm pretty much the same density as the water? So, medium specific... Go on.
I reckon you might drown.
Yeah, you're probably right. But regardless of, this guy's going to splat at the bottom of him jumping off the building, and I'm going to be dead before I hit the surface as a floater. Either way, it's very specific to the medium that you're jumping off the roof in. And I can give a very specific real-world example where there is a roof below surface level of the water. And therefore, if I'm jumping off that roof, I'm not going down.
But there's a good point here before you move on. Baltards, listen to what Veritasium said very intently. He said, this guy jumped off a roof and he's in what frame of reference?
Inertial.
Did he say inertial frame of reference?
Anything not attached to the non-inertial turning reference frame that he hasn't yet detailed and seems to stand in contradiction of Coriolis effect. But yes, he's saying that once he jumps off the roof, he's no longer attached to whatever reference frame he's saying isn't inertial, and he becomes in the inertial reference frame by his description. That's correct.
Oh, damn, I hadn't even spotted that.
I hadn't spotted that either.
Blue balls, the redneck retard, a.k.a. the photosynthetic redneck, a.k.a. Mr. Gumby Football Field. You have some splaining to do, clown. I was going to say it, but I didn't.
He would see you accelerating up at 9.8 meters per second squared.
And if I jump off the roof under the lake? Same thing? No? Right, so very much medium specific then.
I think what this shows is that what an acceleration really is it's a deviation from a geodesic.
Until I describe the same scenario underwater, and then it's pretty much medium specific. As opposed to a geodesic being a bastardization of a flat Earth elevation angle measurement to Polaris to create a grid system that's actually derived from circles, transposed onto a ball, then projected out into a cylinder, then projected out into a flat map so you can show how people move up the ball version of it on a geodesic.
Nathan.
Yeah.
Nathan, let me just paraphrase it. Imagine if you had an egg in water and it was suspended in the middle. You poured a bit of salt in it and you saw the egg accelerate. What he's saying is you don't see it accelerate. You're seeing the egg, quote, deviate from, what did he say? Deviate from a geodesic. That's what he's trying to say.
That's nonsense.
It's complete. Yeah,
you
complete
can't follow a straight line path through space-time because the floor...
No, you can't. Space-time isn't a path. Space-time isn't something you can travel. Time isn't a dimension. So, no, you can't. Fundamentally incorrect.
Or prevents you from doing that. It applies a force upwards on you, so...
What force upwards would that be when I'm stationary, not moving? Is it the rocket that I'm the same as when I'm in a space-time dimension that I don't exist in, you can't travel to, and you had to pretend you were in when you put your little hat on that you dropped?
You're accelerating up. But
No, I'm not. No, I'm not accelerating up. Right now, I'm sitting still. And your assumption that there's one G forcing upwards on me, or forcing down on me to stop me floating away, is an ignorance of the medium that I'm in. That would be air, as opposed to water, where I would float up.
If I'm accelerating up, and so is everyone else around the world.
No, they're all pretty much doing nothing, but you've decided to ascribe 1G to that because of a bent geodesic that doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that's what's actually occurring, Mr. White T-shirt.
And presumably the whole surface of the Earth, then shouldn't the Earth be expanding?
No. No, it shouldn't.
No. It is possible for you to be accelerating even though your spatial coordinates are not changing.
So even though you're not moving, you are accelerating. Yeah, he's looking down the barrel of the camera while he's talking this tripe.
I will show you one equation.
He's accelerating in one direction and accelerating the exact same amount in the opposite direction. I mean, it makes sense because it's math or something.
Net force 0.
From general relativity. This says that the second derivative of your position with respect to time is equal...
With respect to time? Can you show me that? Show me my position with respect to time, please, so I can verify the definition of this in your maths. I'd like to see, in physical terms, my position with respect to time. What's that? You can't show me that because time isn't a dimension. Maybe you could show me in a 3D coordinate system and pretend that that's my position with respect to time. You can't show this. You can't describe it in a dimension because it's not one. So I haven't got a position with respect to time.
To your acceleration, that's just...
What acceleration would that be? Would that be the sitting still actually the same as being on a rocket acceleration that I'm not feeling and isn't experienceable, that acceleration? So I've got my position with respect to a dimension that doesn't exist versus my acceleration that I'm not experiencing. This isn't going well.
F on M. And if you were in flat space-time, well...
Right, in flat space-time, was that your sheet that you dragged out before you dropped the ball on it? Is that what flat space-time is? It's like flat, that's an aspect in 3D Euclidean descriptions. Time, how is that going to be a flat Euclidean dimension when you haven't shown it, demonstrated it, and it isn't real, and it's a convolution of a description and a concept? So this isn't working out well at all.
This is exactly what you're saying. If you're accelerating, your spatial coordinates have to change.
And if we're not, because we aren't, so if we're accelerating and we assume we are because we've got a rocket up our ass, then our spatial coordinate system will change. What, so therefore we're moving without traveling?
But you're not in flat space-time. And this term is related to the curvature of space-time, and this is your velocity through time squared.
Right, so velocity through time squared. So the rate of speed, which is also derived from time in the first instance over time squared. So the time as a derivative in this equation is both a derivative for a duration and a dimension. So not only do we have time being used in two different contexts in the same mathematical equation, it's also something you can be within respect to and as a derivative of an integer of an amount of a period. So which one is it? We haven't actually defined what time's going to be in this maths. That makes no sense. That's got me moving when I'm not moving.
Separate yourself from it, right?
Pardon?
You can separate yourself from time now, according to that, right?
No, because he's still qualified the value at the end of the equation, hasn't he?
Oh. Okay.
And he's done it twice because he's given it in terms of speed, which is in relation to time in the first instance.
You don't have to worry about the details here.
Oh, we did worry about the details. And it made you seem like a proper wanker, talking total shite. But what's that? After you've babbled shite, you're going to tell your audience not to worry about the fucking details? Yeah, until someone like us comes along. Yeah, and it's only going to be us. That's why we need the most amount of ridicule, isn't it? Because we're highlighting the absurdity of your nonsense, where you tell your audience, the guys who ridicule us, not to worry about the details. Yeah, what we did was paused at every single value and defined it, or tried to pick apart what you defined it as incorrect. So we absolutely worry about the details in your nonsense. Yeah, tell your audience not to worry about them. That's why you've got 13.5 million subscribers. Because when you peddle nonsense with your little shell game, after you've peddled it, you tell them not to worry about it. Yeah, I'd be having alarm bells if I actually watch this garbage, which I don't. Yeah, I'd be worried. I'd be worried about you saying, don't worry about the detail. Don't worry about where the P went. Just have a little guess. Put your money down which one next to you think it is. Go on, off you go. Don't worry about the details.
Here, the point is Your position can be not changing. This can be 0.
What, our position with respect to time can be 0? That's what he's just said, because that was what the first part of this explained. Our position with respect to time.
Which means your acceleration must be exactly equal to this curvature term times your velocity through time squared. So
time through velocity? What, like the rate of speed? But isn't time a dimension that we're not moving at 0 with respect to it? So how can you then qualify time as a duration when it's a position that we are in respect to? None of this makes any sense.
The next line clears it all up for me.
He's just saying if you go insanely fast somehow, then eventually you'll just disconnect from time. You
So
become
in curved-
separated from time somehow.
space-time, you need to accelerate just to stand still.
So in other words, when the guy's falling off the building, he's standing still. Because when the guy's not falling off the building, he's standing still, and that means he's accelerating. So we've managed to do the old switcheroo and turn falling at a rate of acceleration that could lead to your death to be a 0 value, like 0g. And when you're standing doing nothing, you're actually accelerating because the ground's coming up at 9.8 meters per second squared. Therefore 1g. No, mate. No, we don't accept any of this. In fact, we pull it apart at its base fundamentals. Go on, go on.
This is why they tell you to don't get hung up on details, because he's literally telling everybody in a conceptual medium you need to move to stand still.
Yep.
Right. This was a. I don't. QA, can you? Is this what he's just described there? If for me to be, I'm accelerating just to stand still at the top of the building, and I step off. Surely, when I hit the ground, that means I've not been accelerating as much as I was when I was at the top of the buildings. Therefore, the reason I hit the ground is, in that description, a deceleration. Because I didn't continue to keep accelerating along with the top of the building. Everything's being described as an acceleration. Now, I'm not accelerating down. I stopped decelerating. I'm not got the same acceleration as the building and the ground.
In essence,
You want me to comment on that?
Yes. Is that the bullshittery that's just been said?
I have no idea, man. I would, to perfectly be honest, I was looking at that equation back there. I was wondering if it was a first order differential and intrinsic invariant in there.
Yeah. So was I.
Second order differential, yeah.
Are people actually falling for this?
You tell me, One Deck. When you're not moving, that means you're moving. Do you accept that?
He said people are actually falling for this.
Look, to be standing still, let's just rephrase it like he did. To be standing still, doing nothing and not moving, you must accept that you are in fact moving. Do you accept that or not, One Deck?
Pun. I'm not falling for any of
pun.
He's still not got it, has he?
Pun, Nathan. Pun. Pun.
A lot of this may seem more complicated than Newtonian physics, but one classical mystery looks a whole lot simpler in general relativity, which is why all objects fall at the same rate.
Why all objects fall at the same rate? Releases helium balloon, looks up at clouds. What are you babbling about? They don't all fall at the same rate. You know, even me, if I jump off the building that's in the lake example I gave over, I'll go up. You know, jumping off a building doesn't even involve falling at the same rate. In certain examples, medium specific. So what are you babbling about, Veritasium? Why are you drawing this as a conclusion 2/3 of the way through the video, when it's simply not the case? Don't you observe clouds? Are you a nutter? Are you locked up in a padded cell, not able to see the clouds above your head, not falling at the same rate as everything else? You're just nuts, aren't you, Veritasium? Thick. Look up at the clouds, you Dumbo! Are they falling at 9.8 meters per second? Oh, let me guess. The other gases around them that are produced in space, they're not, by the way, are falling down to force them up. No, that's not the case either. It's absurd stupidity from this clown. Give him 10 million views. Give him 13 million subscribers while he talks total nonsense, but tells the audience not to worry about the details.
Right.
So just on that screen, Nathan, in his analogy look, he's dropped the balls, but if you look just behind him, he's had to tie the balloons to a piece of string to stop them going up.
But one classical mystery looks a whole lot simpler in general relativity.
Where are the balloons? I don't see any balloons.
Just get ready.
Which is why all objects fall.
Balloons?
Oh, there you go.
It's right behind him when he's holding the two basketballs upright.
Oh yeah. So there are. Oh, what's going on here? Are these are physically having to be restrained, Veritasium, to stop them going down at the same fucking rate? I mean, are you demented? Did you not realise that there's something violating the very principle you're describing in the background within millimetres of the actual example? Does it make you feel stupid, Veritasium? I hope it does, because I'm going to be trimming this bit out and putting Veritasium is an idiot with a physically restrained ball behind an example of all things falling at the same rate, with the subtitles, which is why all objects fall at the same rate. What the unholy hell are these balloons doing, Veritasium? You stupid, insane moron. Now, this is good fun, isn't it? Shouting at Veritasium with his own examples, defying the stupid shit that he says on screen. Do you feel like a Dumbo, Veritasium? I am Nathan Oakley. I'm a proud flat earther. And I'm proud to tell you that while you peddle your stuff that shouldn't be worried about in terms of the details to your audience and tell them that all objects fall at the same rate, you're so stupid that you didn't realise there was something having to be physically restrained from doing that in the background. Earth is flat. Veritasium's an idiot. Gravity is nonsense.
Fall at the same rate.
Check out that balloon not falling and being restrained. What happened there, Veritasium? Why didn't the balloons in the background fall at the same rate? Why weren't they attracted to the Earth that was moving up towards them at 9.8 meters per second?
Wait, I'm not watching. He's got these balloons on the screen as he's saying everything falls down at the same rate?
Yes, they are directly behind a man holding two basketballs above his head, and within millimeters in the background of his example, there are physically restrained balloons not falling down, directly behind the example of basketballs falling through the medium of air. So in very literal terms, a violation of the thing on screen in subtitles saying all things move towards the ground is millimeters away from the example being made. Yes, Chocolate.
Right. You know you're accelerating because you're standing still.
I mean, wow.
I just posted the pick and master D, Chocolate.
Thank you. Because wow, why would you not even think of that? Like, what would even be the purpose of having helium balloons behind you in the first place? Let alone at the moment that you're saying everything accelerates down at the same rate, and you got these things literally not accelerating down at the same rate. That's crazy.
Well, thank you very much for the thumbnail, 10th man. So with the subtitles, quote, as words, as verbatim, which is why all objects fall at the same rate. Here's the helium balloons physically having to be restrained within a couple of mil of the example. And they're even pretty much the same scale and size of the balls in the example. So from where I sit, from as I look at what will become my thumbnail, we've got 1, 2 balloons and pretty much the same size 1, 2. Well, they might as well be balloons. So I don't know what the hell they are. But when he releases them, some have to be restrained from going up and the others go down. I mean, that seems like a really massive oversight on the part of Veritasium now, doesn't it? Making him look incredibly stupid for an audience of people who are here to learn about how gravity is not a force. Right. But yet at the end of his summary, he's telling you how things all fall to the ground at the same rate. What a Dumbo. Let this Dumbo know. Love your stuff. Nathan Oakley 1980 channel responded to you and absolutely humiliated you with your own footage based on your lack of comprehension of how things behave in air.
Just to play devil's advocate a little bit, just question whether or not he's done that intentionally and he's left an Easter egg for us to spot, and he's actually sticking his tongue out laughing at the ball earthers whilst he's doing it.
Yeah, he's either stupid, pissing in the face of globe believers, or a deceitful shit. I mean, you can pick one of your three, I don't care.
Or maybe he just forgot to go to his whoever's directing the props in this video, and forgot to tell him, you might not want to have this prop that literally debunks my claim that I'm going to be making while standing in front of the prop. You might want to remove that. Thanks.
Is he smirking at the time? I'm not watching either, but is he smirking at the same time as he's describing this? Because if he's smirking, he knows.
He's doing it in the overdub, so you can't tell.
He's just gone and got a few videos to prove his point, as he's saying, but he's, I think, genuinely not noticed in this one video. It was the that the balloons are there contradicting his exact point.
Well, also behind him on the banner, gravity is not the Lord, Jesus is Lord.
Is that what it says?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
I mean, this is almost as bad as gas pressure without a container with two containers.
Yeah. I'm beginning to wonder, is this guy actually doing this
I
intentionally?
would always give the standard Newtonian explanation. The only force on a free-falling body is its weight, g/mm on r squared, which equals its mass times acceleration. You can cancel the object's mass on both sides of the equation, hence all objects will have this same acceleration.
But what about the balloon?
Oh, QE's going to pop here. I remember this bit.
Did they change the definition for all?
Hold on, I think he's put up the gravitational equation, has he not, Adam?
Yeah, but it's coming to the inertia one. The two different descriptions here, and he'll say why you can have the two different and convolute. QE, you there?
The mystery is why we could cancel these two m's. The one on the left was gravitational mass, the property of an object that creates and experiences a gravitational field, while the m on the right is inertial mass, a measure of resistance to acceleration. Why should these two conceptually different properties be numerically identical?
So he's pointing out something we point out regularly. Go on, QE, sorry, it was directed to you.
I said because they're undefined.
But he's just defined them as inertia and, well, mol.
Yeah, it's a convoluted gaggle screw. Yeah, but he's in the Newtonian now. It's just he's putting up a compare and contrast between Newtonian and Einstein.
Scientists have spent a lot of time and effort experimentally testing down to around 1 part in 10 trillion that these two types of mass really are the same.
Wow. 1 part in 10 trillion?
How's that an experiment? That sounds like measuring.
Can I just point something out here as well? When he's talking about these two masses are the same, if he was to change the temperature in the room that he's in and literally either make it very cold or very hot, the thing he's looking at will either expand with the heat or shrink with the cold, and it would change its volume. That would then change its density, and then that would fluctuate. But he wouldn't recognize that change because he doesn't consider volume to be an important factor in something's weight. He thinks it's only mass.
You've just described
I don't think that's what he's conflating there. He's conflating the two different descriptions of mass, which are two very different things. And then he's saying there's these experiments that down to 8 whatever trillion, whatever, make it the same. Make what the same? The two descriptions that contradict each other? Does that make them both the same?
he did say conceptually different.
Yeah, but he then says there's an experiment that makes them the same. It proves that they're virtually the same. What, the two different descriptions are now
But
the
in
same?
general relativity, there is no mystery. All objects appear to fall the same way because, well, they're not accelerating. They're just following straight line paths through space-time until
So falling, guy off building, not accelerating. You stood stationary. You have to be accelerating through a geodesic in space-time for their mathematics to work. So 1g when doing nothing, 0g when falling and hurtling towards the ground without any windows, so that he can claim that he's flying at 0g. No, you're hurtling towards the ground.
They encounter something that stops them. Like the objects in the rocket ship, they appear to accelerate at the same rate because they're not really accelerating.
But they are. They've got a rocket underneath them. But you're going to tell me that in a geodesic in space-time with no inertial reference frame to reference, suddenly they're not accelerating? So how, in your example, did they get closer to a planet to be bent through a geodesic if they weren't accelerating through the time and space that we can't experience? Oh yeah, they are. But you're going to also tell us that that means that they're not really accelerating and that that's actually the same as standing still. Total nonsense.
It's the floor accelerating into them.
No. You've told us that that's what's happening when we do nothing.
Now, a lot of this might seem pretty far-fetched.
It is. It's total nonsense, just like you on the ISS with your helmet pretending to be a spaceman. Like the guys on the ISS pretend to be spacemen in a place that isn't real. It's utterly absurd and far-fetched. Yes, we pulled apart every single aspect of it here today.
As it did back in 1915 when Einstein proposed it.
What, and superseded the force of mass attracting mass?
So he very cleverly came up with a measurable prediction that scientists could make to test.
Nothing about this is science, nothing about this is theory. We're just having total hijacking of science by way of Einstein's assumption of a fourth dimensional reified time. No, my friend, no. Go on.
I bet his measurement is actually going to turn out to be calculation, won't it?
Yeah, we already know that.
Test his theory. Imagine that this rocket ship is coasting through deep space.
Show me it. Yeah, let's see you on it. Is that why you got dressed up in a little spacesuit? So like the ISS and their nonsense where they convince you that their stories you're about to tell are actually true because they're there, you're doing the exact same thing, but just not overtly saying that you are actually in space. You know damn well, and you're not going to pretend that you are, while the bullshitters of NASA do the exact same trick, but do actually pretend and lie that they're in a second law of thermodynamics violation. Yeah, it's the same trick. You're doing the same low-budget version of what NASA do. You filmed in a studio with you with a spacesuit on. They film in a studio with them with a spacesuit on. They cut to a CGI rendering of something that looks like a backdrop of space, with a rocket in it, probably a model, filmed in small scale, or a CGI version. And then you tell us the story of how we're in space and what we're experiencing. You are no different, just low-rent version of NASA. They do exactly the same as you, absolutely no different. They just peddle their lies better than you. And you don't profess to actually being in space where they will overtly lie about being in space.
If you shine a light beam across the rocket ship...
Show me. Yeah? This is where me just saying show me to you in your obviously fake set with your obviously fake spacesuit, yeah? You're going to say, well, I can't show you. But these liars over here will, in a fake place that doesn't exist and violates natural law, right? You'll defer to them doing the same thing that you're doing right now.
Well, it'll do exactly what you expect. Light travel...
What I expect, I've never been in space. It doesn't exist, and nobody is. There are no rockets in space. And the liars that claim that they are violating a natural law that would leave us with no gas to breathe if they were actually there.
In a straight line and hits a point on the opposite wall at exactly the same height as the source.
So this isn't something that we can do in physical reality here on the ground. It's only something we can do in a fake place that you're having to fake to make the example. I see.
Yeah, and this is another fake example, as I remember. To convolute again. I think he's going to go really fast and claim that he's bent light. When I listened to this, it was one of these things I was struggling to think how it helps understand what he's claimed. Because like I said, the previous bits with maps and that were just a really bad, dodgy analogy. But just play again and see if it plays the same with you when you hear his description.
But now, what if rocket ship? Well, it'll do exactly what you expect. Light travels in a straight line and hits a point on the opposite wall at exactly the same height as the source. But now, what if this rocket is accelerating? Well, to an external observer, they're still going to see the same thing, light traveling in a straight line.
So yeah, he's inserting this demonstration in a CGI fashion, whilst, you know, again, he hasn't explicitly said that he's not going to space. Now, you might say, well, it's obvious, I'm obviously in a fake spacesuit. It's like, yeah, it's obvious to us that NASA are in fake spacesuits. How is it any different? You're not disclaiming that it's fake. They don't overtly say it's real. How is it any different? Because you're cutting away to a place that isn't real to tell us how it would be experienced on a rocket ship. Well, we're not experiencing that. Nobody is, because it can't be experienced. Can't go to a place that would take all the gas we breathe away.
No, but that's his proof. That's the interesting point, isn't it? You summarise that nice. You've got to go to an experiment you can't do, yeah, in a place that doesn't exist to support the existence of this way of viewing things.
Well, this is the whole thing about thought experiments. It's only in the mind, and you have to imagine it. It's not at all vetted out to be reality.
Okay, well, I'm going to shortly round out the live show because we're going to continue critiquing Veritasium in a moment, and I'm hoping that one of my mods will do a little plug, as there's 130 odd people watching, 126 at the moment, to my GoFundMe campaign, because we've got a load of equipment that's gone bang, and unfortunately when I run out of cash, the only way to actually fix these things or get them replaced, depending on how much money I raise, is to put my hand out to my viewers. So if you are interested in helping support Flat Earth Debate and the equipment that is used to run it, then please support my GoFundMe campaign, which will hopefully be running by the live stream chat any moment, if there is indeed a mod that's doing it. There we go, Divergent Droid, thank you very much indeed, really appreciate your support, and indeed anybody who supports my GoFundMe campaign. But with that, I am going to say, first and foremost, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley, I'll press a couple of buttons. There we go. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, helped my GoFundMe campaign, and all that good stuff. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either Premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!